Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're opening a dossier on what has to be one of the most profound historical anomalies on record. We're looking at a deeply compelling claim from our source material, that ancient history wasn't just written, it was, well, carefully rewritten. Picture this, an evidence board in a dimly lit room. You've got photographs and ancient texts pinned to the corkboard, all connected with red string. That's exactly the vibe here. We're launching a full-scale investigation into the origins of a syncretic faith and exploring how long-held historical narratives might actually be covering up a massive theological heist.
Okay, let's dive into this. How on earth did dark magic and esoteric mystery rituals infiltrate a strict monotheistic faith? Our source material treats this exact question like a historical cold case. Specifically, it zeroes in on the Holy Communion, a ritual involving the symbolic eating of flesh and drinking of blood. Now, in the context of ancient strict monotheism, this concept is entirely alien. It's a complete outlier. So, where did it come from? How did it slip past the guards, so to speak, and become the cornerstone of a global religion?
Let's pin our very first major piece of evidence right in the center of the board, the primary suspect, Paul of Tarsus. According to the historical analysis we're looking at, historians point directly to him as the main architect of this massive transformation. The claim here is that he didn't just spread early Christianity, he fundamentally altered its DNA. He effectively smuggled these esoteric mystery religion rituals into the faith, all under the incredibly careful guise of philosophical explanation. To really grasp the gravity of this, we need to look at the findings of British historian Chaim Maccabee. In his book, The Mythmaker, Paul and the Invention of Christianity, he presents what basically functions as the smoking gun accusation in our investigation. He writes, Paul attached to Christianity a highly pagan ritual, making humans share in divinity through cannibalistic-style eating. Let that sink in. It's a heavy, startling accusation of philosophical distortion. It completely reframes a sacred central rite as a deliberately borrowed pagan practice. Right, so if Paul is our primary suspect, where exactly is the scene of the crime? Well, the answer lies in the city of Tarsus. We are pinning Tarsus right to our investigation board because it wasn't just some random backdrop in the ancient world. Not at all. It was this massive, bustling cultural hub teeming with ancient mystery religions. Literally the absolute perfect incubator for philosophical blending and theological adaptation. Let's actually pull out the files on the specific cults operating in Tarsus. French historian Charles Guindebert points out that the city was completely flooded with secret Greek and Syriac religions. We've got Orphism, the cult of Dionysus, Mithraism, and the worship of Baal, who, by the way, was often equated by the locals to the Greek Zeus. All of this created a highly fertile environment for what the source describes as a calculated theological heist. Our suspect didn't just stumble upon these concepts, he was surrounded by these esoteric ideas literally from birth.
And to pull the red string even tighter on our board here, let's look at the findings of historian Will Durant. He noted, in Tarsus, there were many religions, mostly revolving around the belief in the death of the god and his resurrection from the dead for the salvation of mankind. Now think about the implications of that for a second. You can connect the red string directly from the pagan dying god trope found in these ancient mystery cults straight to our suspect's hometown. It is a direct, undeniable geographical and cultural link.
This brings us to a crucial piece of terminology for our investigation. Basically, the suspect's methodology, syncretism. This is the philosophical blending of multiple esoteric deities into one immortal, eternal God. In these local mystery religions, they often refer to this blended deity as Iao, which was essentially a single god of dark magic with many names. The source argues that Paul didn't need to go searching the globe for these esoteric ideas. No, he was steeped right in this Tarsian philosophy of merging complex, diverse gods into one singular, highly accessible deity.
Okay, let's shift over to the motive. How do you sell a completely new faith to the massive, firmly established Roman Empire? Step into Paul's shoes for just a second. You are facing arguably the ultimate marketing and ideological problem of the ancient world. You've got this new message, right? But your target audience is entirely devoted to an ancient, powerful, and deeply entrenched pantheon of gods.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact problem he faced. On one hand, you have the Roman gods, powerful, immortal, conquerors of death, worshipped by the mighty emperors themselves. Against that, you have the early Jesus movement, a relatively unknown, crucified, physically weak human figure in the eyes of Rome, followed by roughly 15 peasant fishermen and laborers. Looking at it this way, you can see exactly why the source argues Paul needed a drastic adaptation just to make this faith survive, let alone spread across an entire empire.
So, the crucial point here is exactly how he executed this. The source lays out Paul's step-by-step MO, his modus operandi, to completely overhaul the faith. Step 1. Elevate Jesus to the absolute status of a god. Step 2. Introduce the dying and resurrecting motif to perfectly match those Roman and Tarsidian deities we were just talking about. And Step 3. Open the religion entirely to the masses. The primary goal of this syncretism strategy? To ensure that the Romans wouldn't feel some jarring revolutionary shock when abandoning the ancient religion of their fathers. It had to feel familiar.
Let's examine another striking verdict from Chaim Maccabi on this exact strategy. He states that Paul defended a doctrine rooted in myth unrelated to Judaism. Jesus himself, if alive, would be shocked by the tortured God persona Paul dressed him in. Our source material views this transition not as some divine revelation, but as a highly calculated theological construction designed specifically for mass appeal. It was, for all intents and purposes, a complete rebranding of the movement's core identity.
This rebranding really builds into the physical expansion of the movement, revealing an incredible discrepancy. On one side, we have Jesus' original stated mission in the texts, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." Very localized, very specific. But then pit that against Paul's modified mission, universal salvation for all of humanity. It is a massive, empire-wide expansion plan that deviates significantly from the founder's original scope. It was a brilliant, albeit historically controversial, pivot.
And this pivot leads us to the ultimate opportunity, targeting the working class. See, while the traditional Roman gods were guarded by wealthy elites in very limited secretive sects, Paul took this newly constructed, universal, sacrificed God and brought it directly to the poor, the marginalized, and the absolute lowest rungs of Roman society. He essentially bypassed the elite gatekeepers entirely.
To prove just how successfully Paul captured this exact demographic, the source provides a fascinating, honestly incredibly harsh quote from a 2nd century Roman philosopher named Celsus in his critique The True Word. Celsus mocks the early movement with just absolute disdain, writing, "Christians are wool workers, shoemakers, laundry workers, and illiterate rustics who dare not speak in front of their intelligent masters." Now, as insulting as Celsus definitely meant this to be, it brilliantly illustrates the demographic reality of the time. Paul successfully captured the uneducated masses by offering them a familiar, completely accessible deity.
So let's step back for a minute and look at the final verdict on our metaphorical evidence board. The historians highlighted in our source present a really compelling three-point case. First, the rituals of communion closely mirror ancient esoteric magic. Second, the dying and resurrecting God narrative is a direct match for Tarsian mythology. And third, this strategy of syncretism allowed pagans to convert comfortably without abandoning their fundamental worldview. According to this analysis, the Tarsian effectively smuggled the mystery religions into the new faith, transforming it completely from the inside out. As the spotlight fades on our investigation today, I want to leave you with one lingering question based on this dossier. If the very foundation of this movement was built on these ancient mysteries, how many more pagan rituals are hiding in plain sight today? It's a question that really forces us to look closer at the history around us, to question the accepted narratives, and of course, to always follow the evidence. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.